Seiko Turtle. Sometimes I wonder what life would be like if I hadn't dived into watches so deeply. Back when I was first getting into the hobby, life was simple. I had an Orient Mako on wrist. Seiko was all I'd look at. And maybe, just maybe, a Speedmaster would come into the collection someday. Then in early 2016, Seiko unveiled the SRP reinterpretation of their 6309 series divers called the Seiko Turtle, and it's a release that constantly takes me back, leading me to reminisce over those early collecting days. Taking the plunge and purchasing one was a giant leap for me. But then I sold it and bought another, then sold that one and bought another, which is specifically the watch I'll be talking about today. A JDM variant of the popular SR777 Seiko Turtle. This Seiko Prospex SPDA15 was the one that finally stuck, and after rotating it for a couple years now, I figured it was a good time to finally give it the TBWS review treatment. Much of what I indulge in when collecting involves small details that I can either appreciate privately or share with others that are equally enthusiastic about those details. Sure, it's a little knackered why, but it's especially fun when you manage to chase this feeling with relatively cheap watches. This Seiko Turtle automatic diver is a great example with its JDM made in Japan dial and kanji day wheel, small touches that most of the time only impress me. But other than that, this is basically a standard reinterpretation of a certain Seiko 6309 diver's watch with some updates to the case and movement. Manufactured from 1976 to 1988, the 6309 diver served as some of Seiko's most enduring models, seeing wide use among a variety of wearers, some even in the military. And with a revival of interest in vintage watches sparking in the mid-2010s, Seiko made one of their best moves ever by reissuing these things. Almost everyone was on board, and considering the later reinterpretations of other models, the SR77's lineup still stands as what I consider one of their best values. For those intimately familiar with the 6309, you'll see that there's a slight departure from the original case shape. The lugs on the SPDA15 or SR777 are stubby, resulting in a longer lug-to-lug length, but nothing I find unmanageable with a 6.75-inch wrist. In fact, while running my research for this article, I found a really great Random Rob YouTube video where he discusses many of the 6309 case details and how they might compare to newer Seiko Turtle models. Even considering those differences, I still feel comfortable calling this a reissue of sorts. Of course, one of the coolest features is the asymmetrical design that incorporates the screw-down crown, helping out with 200 m of water resistance. The stainless steel case comes in at 44.3 m in diameter with a thickness of 14 and a 48 m lug-to-lug distance. We've said it many times before, but the Seiko magic leads this watch to wear a little smaller than those dimensions would suggest. Still, keeping the shorter 6309 lug style would have been really cool. I still prefer this case shape or size to the 6105 Willard style cushion divers. My only complaint here is the embarrassing alignment issue with the dive bezel or insert that many new Seiko models suffer from, and this one is no different. Such a shame considering the bezel has such a nice and smooth feel to it. The insert is aluminum, and I'm actually not even sure if Seiko has experimented with ceramic bezel inserts yet. Perhaps the watch's most charming feature is its style. It's an incredibly simple approach, and something I think Seiko has dominated in for decades. The texture of color is matte black with beefy, Luma-bright indexes that are virtually impossible to mix up when reading the time. And after so many years of hearing people complain about the Prospex X logo, I'll finally come out and say that it never bothered me. No sapphire crystal here, by the way, but I've never had any issue with Seiko's Hardlex material. Now, I don't want anyone to get wrapped up in suspected quality differences between models with JDM dials and those without. That whole KVS JSKX debate is just as bad. I reiterate that the only printing differences you see here are related to the brand's intended market for the model, and any domestic requirements outlined by that market. Seiko has made some vast improvements with their rubber straps over the last few years, and I'm grateful that this Seiko Turtle comes with ones of the newer soft vintage straps. But like any Seiko, the real fun comes when you start swapping straps. Sure, the stock silicone strap is nice with a softer feel, beefier buckle, and steel keeper. But I've always said that a Seiko Turtle on a NATO just feels like home. When it comes to the 4R36 automatic movement powering the Seiko Turtle, there really isn't much to say other than it's all luck of the draw. Tucked behind the screw-down caseback, this is essentially a 7S26 with hacking and hand-winding features. I think the power reserve is even the same as a 7S26, about 40 hours.